turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hey, Tim.
Hello, Ryan.
And hey, listeners. Hello to you. Good day, good evening, good morning, whenever this may find you. Welcome to episode 154 of Dismembering Horror, the podcast where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
myself, Tim Aslin.
That's right. We dismember a horror film for you every week. In fact, we talk about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything else we found interesting or noteworthy about, you guessed it, a horror film, all under the guise and spirit and mood, ideally, of friends getting together after a horror movie and digesting it, aka dismembering it. We hope you watched it and that's the spirit of it. But hey, if you just want to hang out, if you showed up late to the party, whether you showed up with a six-pack or not, we welcome you all the same to, if you ask all the questions you want, though we may not be able to hear you. And for today's episode, we traveled back to 1970 for another cult classic film, Equinox, as pulled last week by our special guest from our hat. Equinox, not to be confused with the hoity-toity gym chain in Los Angeles.
Oh my God, the fitness gym. I have a friend who worked for them for a while.
Can you imagine those? It's just such a disconnect. Can you imagine those people and what their aesthetic is and everything, being inspired by this film? It's just...
Well, it all depends on which Equinox you're going to, right? If you go to the one in Brentwood, it's going to be a very different experience than the one in West Hollywood.
No, I think all the idea with the Equinox is it provides the same experience no matter where you go.
That may be true, but it doesn't provide the same clients.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You might meet somebody interesting. I saw Timothy Oliphant at an Equinox once.
So you've been?
My friend worked there. I went in and, got a little training session once.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Timothy Oliphant. Well, again, very, very... So if you know the Equinox we're talking about there, imagine, I don't know whether it be an opposite, but a completely different side of the spectrum is what the Equinox is we're talking about today. Today's Equinox was directed by Dennis Muren, Oscar-winning special effects person. And then as a short film, and then after that was taken under steed by appointed editor-director Jack Woods, who expanded it into a feature film.
Under steed? Wow.
So Dennis Muren is uncredited on the final result, but he indeed directed
what a term.
What it came to be. And then a screenplay by Jack Woods, which again, Dennis Muren made the short. So who knows?
Can you elaborate? Who's Dennis Muren?
So he was...
I know who he is, but let's talk it out a little bit.
Guy living in Glendale in college, had been making, experimenting with special effects, sort of practical effects, like in-camera effects as a kid, teenager, young adult, when he decided one summer to get together with some other friends with similar interests and make this short film, which was originally titled not Equinox, but The Equinox, Journey into the Supernatural.
Oh.
And then they were able to successfully shop it around, which was when the distributor had them expand the short into, or hired this Jack Woods guy to expand it into a feature. And then that sort of set Dennis Muren off on his course, where he had heard about George Lucas, whose films he knew, was working on some sort of space movie. So Dennis Muren was all, oh, cool, I want to try to be a part of that. And indeed, he got to be a part of that. Famed Industrial Light and Magic moved up to my hometown of San Rafael, California.
Ooh.
And went on to do more than just the original Star Wars. They went on to do all our famous favorite films of which Dennis Muren was involved in most of them up through in Jurassic Park, I want to say is what he might have won the Oscar for. I forget. And he's also a friend of a family friend. So I knew him from going to 4th of July parties.
Oh, nice.
Growing up. And
That's cool.
A nice guy, and I have a good picture of me holding a croquet mallet with his dog.
Yep.
So that's who he is.
That's who he is. He's a jovial fellow.
He looks exactly like what you'd expect a special effects
he sure does.
guy to look like. It's kind of great. And he's a really, really good guy.
It's fun because like if you watch anything on like Star Wars, the making of Star Wars, whatever, he's in all of the pictures. You know what I mean? Like, and he's interviewed and stuff, but like all those original ILM sort of docs, footage from the 70s, like he's in there with his little, he's in his 70s get up and everything. He's all over the place. It's great.
That's a good. You're right.
I feel like he has a mustache in a lot of those, but maybe not.
I don't
There's
think
two
so.
dudes that I always get mixed up, but either way.
But you're right. If you were just asking me who is he, I feel like that is how people like us know him. Oh yeah. That guy at all the Star Wars special features.
He's the one talking about the chess game in the first Star Wars and how they like did the claymation and the like all of that stuff. You know, that's his claim to fame, I guess.
And as we'll get into, his film Equinox really did a lot just for keeping that filmmaking spirit and love of special effects alive and going and passed from one generation to the other.
Yep.
Great.
All
right. Well, with all that, I think we're ready to watch our trailer here.
Ready.
All right. So again, from 1970, Equinox.
What happened to Dr. Waterman? Only this man, last to see him alive, knows. Equinox. The invisible barrier between good and evil. The invisible barrier between light and the forces of darkness. The supernatural before your very eyes. As 4 teenage boys and girls fight a devil cult for their sanity, for their lives, for their eternal souls. Equinox, a story that defies logic, confounds belief. Dr. Waterman, wait!
I can't believe it. It was just a phone.
What is the secret of the 1,000-year-old book?
What I liked about that trailer, though, as far as this podcast is concerned, it was you didn't need to see it to get it. I feel like we've had a lot of moody trailers recently where you don't, the visual, you rely on the visual. You get it with what you just heard, listeners.
Yeah.
That narration, classic indeed.
Equinox.
Yeah. All right, Tim. Well, per our rating system, let's figure out what we would tell ourselves regarding Equinox. Would we tell ourselves to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
I would rent this. It's actually pretty close to a buy because of how, like, I don't know what the right word would be. It's such a specific, like, thing. I don't know, like a nostalgic. It's not nostalgic to me, but in the nostalgia of the broader film, like, history, this kind of, although it was made in the 70s, it feels very much like the Blob. It's got this kind of B movie thing going on that I really like midnight screening, drive-in theater kind of vibe. Like, and there's something, well, there's obviously something cool to that, but there's a lot of trash in that genre, so to speak. And this is this is elevated in that realm to me. Like, this is the best kind of B movie.
Yeah, it's the spirit behind it. It's not made by exploitive people.
Exactly.
Just like, all right, what's on the poster?
Yep.
These people making it were young and loved movies, and you can tell.
Yep. That's exactly it. So for all of the fun of it too. Like this is what years and years of other filmmakers either were inspired by or parodied, depending on who it was. And I think all of that, you know, lends itself to the broader, what is the word? The broad film world history something.
Our filmic language, in a way, our filmic runes,
Yeah.
our history, our living history, that is film, and how it evolves and how we relate to it and know it, and how the techniques that are used in it.
Totally. Yeah, so I think it's cool. It's almost a buy for me. Not quite, but
That's great to hear.
you know, maybe if I saw this on a, you know, I don't know, if I saw like a Blu-ray of this, I might grab it.
Yeah, there is.
I wouldn't go seek it out, but if I was like casually strolling around somewhere and like walked into a, you know, like a comic book store or a video store or something and saw it, I might grab it. It's pretty close.
It's one of those releases like that Criterion has done, like another one we watched, Fiend Without a Face,
Yeah.
where they released it on DVD but is yet to receive a Blu-ray upgrade.
Yeah. See, well, there you
Look
go.
how cool that post there,
Hell yeah.
the cover is for the DVD.
Yeah. What was the British one that we just watched, Village of the Damned? You know, like that's older, obviously, but it sort of has a similar spirit, I feel like.
Only by 10 years.
Yeah. So I actually quite like this era of, would you call this high concept? High art? What would you call this?
I mean, just the monsters. I mean, just like what we heard in the trailer, because that's all going on. It doesn't even have, why I say it, I guess why high concept doesn't ring to me, because it's more just like drive-in stuff that, you know, that crowd is going to like. The Ring of Evil or whatever it just said. Monsters,
Book of
hell.
Satan, monsters. Like,
yeah,
it's all over the place.
But
there's no real continuity of story, so to speak.
It's not like
but
The
it doesn't
Incredible
matter.
Shrinking Man. It doesn't have that
Yeah,
premise.
yeah,
Or-
you're right.
or even something like just giant spiders. We get it.
Like if it was about the ape creature, sure.
It'd be
But it's
called
not
something like
right,
that.
exactly. The ape creature from Topanga Canyon.
Yeah. Exactly. Amazing. Oh yeah, you mean the ape creature from Topanga Canyon. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to echo your sentiments and rating and give it a hearty rent it. Yeah, well, as I just said, I echoed your reasons and I'll repeat them soon and what worked, so I'll just save it for then.
Yeah. It's so I don't know, is kitschy the right word? It kind of is the right word. That it's great.
Yeah.
I might be a buy, actually.
Well, you
I
have
don't
the
know.
end of the episode to decide.
Sure.
We'll give you that much.
Let's talk about it.
All right. Well, let's continue to talk about it in the form of a summary. What even happened in this film?
You know, classic setup, but then I'm like, it's only classic because of the things that came after this, I feel. Like this feels like the early version of a now classic setup.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which is a student's mentor, professor in this case, has kind of gone missing in the, let's call it the woods. We'll get into why I say that later. And they go on a little jaunt. He and his friends decide to kill two birds with one stone and have a picnic, as well as a jaunt to find the professor in the mountains of the San Gabriel Mountains.
It's a blind date too, or something?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It basically, this guy, Dave, right? David? I think that's his name.
Dave, John, who knows?
Yeah. That's right. Isn't it David? David.
Yes.
Yeah, it is David. You know why? Because I kept thinking of David from Legion, which is a
Got it.
recommendation.
Let's go.
Anyway.
Our dudes are David and Jim. Our
That's right.
gals are Susan and Vicky.
Right. So David, he needs a car, or he needs somebody to go with him. I think that's what it was. And Jim, his buddy, is like, I'll go with you, but I already made plans. Oh, sorry, I made plans to have a picnic with my girl. So she's going to come along, but also she doesn't want to be the only girl there. So she's going to bring Susan. And so you guys can have a double date, blind date,
Beautiful.
picnic / look for the professor in the woods.
What a great afternoon.
I mean, really, what more could you ask for?
Yeah.
I feel like this is just a normal Tuesday in Southern California, to be perfectly honest.
Sense of adventure, dates. It's great.
Yeah. So they go off, and I'm skipping the what do you call it?
The cold open.
Yeah, the cold open. I'm going to skip that for now, just to give you a sense of the story. But they go off. They find some mysterious things. They find a cave with a weird old dude in it who gives them a book. They see a giant castle out of nowhere up on the mountainside. They do some exploring. They look for the professor. They find the professor. The professor is gone crazy.
There's a weird sheriff guy on his horse.
Yeah,
kind
there's
of.
a sheriff, horseback sheriff just roaming around the mountain. And all of this is to say that they essentially discover this very Necronomicon-esque Book of the Dead kind of thing, or spell book, or Satan book. It's not exactly precisely clear what it is, but it unleashes a evil power in the mountains there, and they have to kind of survive the trials of what the book throws at them. Maybe it's not the book, but it's the forces that want the book to not leave the mountain put a bunch of obstacles in their way.
And for whatever reason, they really want to take the book out of the mountain.
That's right. It's such a discovery.
Yeah.
And then, everybody kind of gets it. There's some possession stuff. There's interdimensional stuff. It's pretty off the hook. Let's be honest. There's an ape creature that's giant. There's an actual giant.
Yeah.
They have to fight off all these different beings. There's a squid octopus monster at one point. It's far out. Eventually, David gets away. And in his sort of escape, he gets hit by a car that's a ghost car, essentially driven by nobody, and is discovered on the side of the road and institutionalized. And that's our cold open, is actually him being discovered, institutionalized. He's gone mad. He's holding on to Susan's cross. Won't talk to anybody.
He's
put in
gone
a straitjacket.
especially mad just because of not what he's seen, but because he was told he has 1 year and 1 day left to live before the forces will come and get him.
Yep. So there's a lot of, spells, mysticism, Satan, evil, monsters. I mean, it's all over the place in a good way.
And a lot of forest and meadow. Or dirt. Well, I don't know. What do you call that? Just dirt cave stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool. I'm pretty sure that's the cave that we hiked up to.
Yeah, the classic.
Beechwood Canyon, whatever it is.
I know there was some stuff that was shot by the Rose Bowl. Area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all filmed all over this area. It's really fun because everything looks familiar because it's just the landscape of this area.
Yeah.
I was like, man, is that actually a place I've been, or couldn't quite tell. Some of the Griffith Park locations for sure. I was like, I know like that. I was there yesterday, like hiking around. Like, come on.
Great.
I know, I love it. So that's all very fun. I guess that's it, right? That's sort of the story.
I think so. I'm possessed people too.
Right. Yeah, the evil kind of has it's it's hard to explain in a way because it's kind of just a bunch of different, popular concepts from different types of movies.
Robed zealots of some kind.
Right. I mean, there's
in a
like
hellish landscape.
Yeah, the park ranger on horseback is also the devil, maybe.
He's Osmodeus,
right, which is another name for the devil,
the prince of demons.
There you go. So, and he's got a ring. Who knows? It's it's fun, but it's playing fast and loose with any sort of actual lore.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm itching to get to our next section here. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, here we go. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, all of the things I just said.
I know, that's why I think I was itching to get to this section. Well, just like the way you were describing it of, I was just right out here in Griffith Park and these areas of LA. It's just one of the many ways that this film is just through and through just filled with that spirit of just get together with your film loving friends and make a film.
Yep.
Let's get together over summer and make it happen. It's beautiful and inspiring, honestly, not to use hyperbole I just did, but it really, for someone like me, who that's their world, it really an those things.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It has that feeling. It's a enhanced version of the feeling of the movies that I made in high school. Like, it's way better than those, but it's the same feeling. It's like we kind of just were grabbing ideas of other movies and just sort of concepts that we thought were cool and throwing them together and just running through the woods.
Well, yeah, and maybe what makes this work, like, I know what you mean. Of course, we all have those where it's like, it's not as good, ours weren't as good or whatever, but I think what makes this one work is they were pursuing such a specific, clear genre that they know is just like, you put in these things. It doesn't matter how good the acting is, whether they were aware of that or not. It's just, all that's aside the point. We just come up with a fun story that's just an excuse to do all these things.
It certainly doesn't matter that they clearly shot this in two completely different times.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's hair is different except for like one person from like shot to shot.
That the whole thing is dubbed. Like, it's
the whole thing is dubbed. Like, what a wild way to do it.
But it's all
But you kind of had to, right? I imagine if you're not going to lug into the woods a bunch of sound gear, and they probably didn't have the budget.
It was Dennis Muren with like a wind up Bolex where they only shoot super limited amounts of I guess took the smaller film reels.
Yeah.
So like, it was just a matter of, as soon as they hit roll, they'd start saying their lines, and they just hope to get them out by the end of the roll.
Yeah. But that's all fun because there's just this half of the adventure is not just the adventure of the story, but the adventure of the filmmaking.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool and fun and exciting. And it actually kept me involved. I think if this was a polished movie in any sort of, way of looking at that phrase, I'd probably be more bored. But because it's doing this sort of like, we gotta get it. And we got to just like run and gun and do it.
It's like when we watched,
that in of itself is exciting.
When we watched The Stuff, Larry Cohen.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much that spirit.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, it's that get it done spirit behind it that's just so appealing. Yeah. Where it's like, all right, we got our actors, we got our location, and then it's just about using your imagination just to come up with stuff. And I mean, like we said, it keeps you engaged, and because it's on this level, this type of filmmaking, it just makes it so every time we get one of the new creatures, it's just so exciting because you're like, look what they came up with and made next. We had, like I think you said it all, but we had like this tentacled squid creature
So
who
good.
destroys the professor's cabin. Then we have I guess, an ogre and a giant.
Yeah.
And then our big finish, we have like a straight up flying red
Oh my
devil
God.
demon creature.
One of the greatest things I've ever seen.
I thought of you with that. Just like, it is so much fun.
I will say every single time a new creature showed up, I was like yelling.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, holy shit. Yes. So, that's great. That's amazing.
their fun of making it is in it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
You know what's interesting? I wonder if Del Toro was a fan of this, because in a way it sort of has that like, let's just make some wild creatures up and throw them in. That some of his films have that same sort of energy.
I mean, we could give it the context of, because you say Guillermo del Toro. There was, Peter Jackson. There was a handful of
Totally.
filmmakers that were directly inspired by sort of a combination of Ray Harryhausen and Forrest J. Ackerman's famous Monsters of Filmland, which
Mhm.
was a magazine back, way, way, way before internet era.
Wait, when was that popular? 60s?
Yeah, that whole era, 50s, 60s,
Yeah.
70s, I want to say, when the Dennis Murens and
Right.
Guillermo del Toros were growing up. But it was basically the way where you could look at stills from the films
That's
that
right.
you were only able to see once in the theater or whatever.
Did you do that as a kid?
Like get magazines
Yeah.
and stuff? Yeah, I mean, I had special effects books
Did
and
you?
things
Nice.
like that, and any making ofs I'd love to find. And I told you, because I was family friends with the people who are my family friends are friends with Dennis Muren. So these family friends worked for Industrial Light and Magic
nice.
too. So they had all these like, God, what was it called? I mean, they had the big ILM book, but they always had all sorts of behind the scenes stuff.
That's cool.
And I got to go to ILM a handful of times and look at all
Wild.
this stuff.
Just
So
wild.
that was actually my kind of what got me into filmmaking that's what made me realize, oh wait, people are making these, as like a young kid.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to go on a tangent.
There was a down the street from Ian Lenny's place, there was a newsstand on the corner of Culver and Monroe Ave. And I think it was Culver, whatever, it doesn't matter. And that newsstand, because we're little, we're 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. Like, what do we have to do? It's like we just wander around, right? But you have to stay within about a mile of wherever you're at. So we'd be at his place. We go down to the newsstand, get some whatever sodas or something like that. But like, it was a regular thing to go to that inside that newsstand and flip through Fangoria.
Yeah, Fangoria.
There was another makeup magazine that they carried. There was like two just general film magazines.
So those were kind of the follow-up to Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Exactly.
Or like
Like that's
that
what we got into, and we would just sit there and flip through. I remember flipping through and seeing Pinhead and the Predator like makeup like spreads, and just being like, what is happening? Like, these are amazing. And I was like, I would love to buy this, but I knew that if I bought them, my mom would be like, you can't have that. Like, that stuff's scary, and that stuff's, gruesome and
Weren't
all
you
this.
getting away with watching the movies
Yeah, but
themselves,
she didn't watch them with me.
It was your brother who kind of...
That's right. So like, sure, she would have found the magazines and been like, this is gross, and thrown them out. Sorry, Mom. It was my mom's birthday yesterday. But so I just always like, that was my, in a weird way, it's the same energy as going to, a magazine place and like sneaking a peek at the Playboys or something like that. It was the same vibe of being like, oh, I'm kind of not allowed to look at this in a way. And we'd look through it and be like, that was sweet, and then put it back on the shelf.
It was
and
just
run out of there.
The promise of the world being more and exciting and all that.
Because there's some
offer.
really intense gore in those magazines.
Yeah.
It's like just people torn apart, whatever. Anyway, so all of that's to say that's the same energy, right? It's that as a kid, you get just locked into the fantasy of these films, and try to make your own version of it.
And how cool. And that's probably all those reasons why Criterion deemed it whatever they say, artistically blah 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 noteworthy films.
Historically,
whatever.
The big thing to me about like just abroad what worked is the ingenuity of the effects, right? There's like a cohesiveness to it, even though it's so clearly an effect. But because of the world and the sort of the trappings of the world that they start us out with, I'm on board with like every single effect. Some of that split screen stuff it's like super basic to us now, but like it's so cool to see how they were, well, not how, but that they were doing that stuff in this low budget of a realm. And like, it's just cool. It's like you're taking miniatures and splicing, like compositing them into the same frame as like live action. That's amazing. I loved all of it.
Yeah.
Like the forced perspective stuff is so cool.
Oh, right. Yeah. It just, yeah, it's like, of course, it made me think of Lord of the Rings,
Absolutely.
It was as a modern example, but then I just made the connection of, that was Peter Jackson. And he was,
Yeah, I know. It's so cool because in a way, this movie is basically pulling out all the stops. Like every trick, every visual trick you can come up with is pretty much in this movie.
Well, even
of the time, certainly.
And you can tell it's from a knowledge, experiential, just sort of backyard knowledge of the 16 millimeter cameras, where, I mean, down to there's a whole tinted sequence where like, oh yeah, we could tint the film to give it this sort of...
Yeah, it's the other dimension.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's all yellow.
Right.
I loved, just effect-wise, just to shout something out that wasn't the stop motion, but whenever we had those cloaked hooded figures and just the screen took on a red quality and just had that like gauze around it. But there's one shot specifically where they're falling into a pit.
Dude,
I just loved that shot.
I was
so
like,
much.
Man, they really like went for it with this shot. It's so cool. It's actually very similar to the Jingoku shot. Jigoku, yeah.
Reminded me of Phantasm too, just that feeling of like cloaked figures in a weird desert landscape.
You know what? Maybe part of why I love this so much is because all of the stuff we know now, modern technology, modern film techniques, you and I could go out into Griffith Park right now and do this movie, like fairly easily. And just thinking about how they were like constructing these effects, because now they're accessible, like the ease to make those effects is accessible. I was like, this would be so much fun to recreate. Like how do you do the guy falling into the pit, right? Like pretty easily, to be honest. Like you and I could just put, like, I have that big green screen roll of paper. We could just we could lay it on the ground, put a camera above it, and we just like jump off of something and wave our arms a little bit and then comp that into a shot of whatever we want, the pit of hell, whatever. And it would be essentially the same.
Yeah, but this does have the quality, though, that pre-digital era and sort of pre-mass green screen use, where it feels like it's all down to the literal compositing two film reels together of shooting two different elements. But even that we could do
magic work.
Yeah,
we could do the same exact effect and just do it on muslin, right? Like or what's the black?
Yeah.
So you just do it. It would it actually would create that kind of that line around everything, the black sort of like that you kind of have to. You try to paint out in a way.
Why
it's be so fun?
Why is that so much more fun and exciting than like watching a YouTube tutorial of how to do that on After Effects?
Why is it fun? Because you actually have to come up with something.
Yeah,
you're not just plug and playing. That's the difference.
What do you think? Do you think I'll save that I'm going to save that question for things of note.
Ooh, exciting. I've got a huge thing of note. Just huge. Don't let me forget.
Great. And I won't forget what I was going to ask. Another overall thing that worked for me, and it is more just another side of a spirit behind it versus the filmmaking, was how I put it as, I'm trying to think of it as like, this is 1970. But even not knowing the years aside, this felt like, oh, this is the middle ground of the Blob and the Evil Dead.
100%.
This is exactly that spiritual center. And then it was just so cool to think of the dates and be like, oh, this is essentially, give or take a few years, right in the middle.
Quite literally, yeah.
Of those two things. And then just because in the Wikipedia, like I saw someone describe it even better than how I thought of just then, so I wanted to share. In his review of the film, Bill Gilbron from DVD Talk wrote, in a strange way, Equinox is the Evil Dead with Ray Harryhausen substituting for Sam Raimi. So there's...
Okay, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, really, it is. It's amazing to me how, well, maybe it's not. Well, I don't know. My assumption is that like Sam Raimi saw this and was like, I'll take that, and I'll take that, and I'll take that.
Well, but you could have just seen what inspired this for Sam Raimi to get to the Evil Dead, though.
True, but the specific design of a specific shot made me go, okay, he watched this.
Well, I like to think when there's so much, we're always talking about influence and the line of filmmaking and all that, and horror specifically. I think there's something more going on that's like you don't have to have seen something to somehow just be plugged into what the evolution is within all that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But this is the same movie as Evil Dead.
Right. No, so that's what I'm saying. And then
there's a literal shot of the Book of the Dead that is filmed in the exact same manner in Evil Dead as this.
No, so
it is quite clear.
No, and that is why I thought of it. That is why I specifically said, between the Blob and the Evil Dead. Because you're right, it's not just the aesthetics, but the story elements too. The possessed people attacking each other, like you said, the book, reading from the book, all that stuff.
The cross, the crucifix around her neck.
Yeah,
like
the interdimensional stuff, the dimensional portals.
Which is great. Like, whatever, man. Like, do what you want. Like, take what you love and make your own version of it.
And then I
have no problem with that.
Right. And then even from the special effects side of in Evil Dead 2, the stop motion of Henrietta, like they use, or even the stop motion of the bodies decomposing in the first Evil Dead.
Yeah,
like
totally.
Still, so both in story and aesthetics, it's just fun to see that direct line.
And what's so cool is like Sam Raimi obviously took the things that he loved, but it's a very different actual story. Even though the Jesus, how do you parse this out? The plot construction is essentially the same.
You got to get to a cabin in the forest.
Well, it's like you got to go to a remote place. In that remote place, there was a professor. That professor discovered a book. That book is the Book of the Dead.
This is like the Evil Dead if when they got there, the cabin was destroyed.
That's right. Yeah. I just find that to be fascinating. Because again, I think to my first sort of original point of why it's like a rent / almost buy, its influence is far reaching. And I think, granted, if this movie wasn't made, Evil Dead in some form or another would have been made probably, but it wouldn't be what we got. And that's probably true for a lot of films. So it's a weird thing to go, okay, this movie that basically, I think very few average, moviegoers, like current sort of moviegoers, don't know about this. I didn't know about this movie,
so,
and I've seen a lot of movies.
When we say, this bridges the gap between the Harryhausen era, which is into the 50s Blob era, and then the Sam Raimi era, it's you can also put that as like how you're putting it. You're saying like it's keeping the torch up. It's keeping the flame going. And what would it and what would it be without this film? Would the flame be as brightly lit? Would we have that direct continuity as much?
Huge part of film history, and the way the chips fell throughout film history. This is a major chip.
Because you think of like Dennis Muren lived not far from Forrest J. Ackerman, so he was going over to his place and kind of like asking questions about, this movie and that movie and this question about Ray Harryhausen, whatever. So even just in a practical filmmaking sense, they're doing a service in a way of saying this can be done with these means in 1970.
Right. All of that's really fun. And it makes the experience of watching this movie more enjoyable to me as a filmmaker. And I think, it'd be interesting to show this to just your, non-cinephile casual viewer and see what they walk away with.
I'm more curious to show them to. Actually, our previous guest, Andy, if you're listening, he has 3 young girls. And it's been a trip to hear him talking about how they react to things like the original Star Wars with older effects in it.
Right.
So I wonder how far that can carry. So, yeah.
Yeah. What else did you love?
I can get into more specifics now of
why not?
It's the standout moment for me, Tim, that just gave me the most glee. Fortunately, it wasn't effect related. That was all. Of course, I loved that. But it was the old man in the cave, the crazed old man in the cave. And it would not have been the same had they not dubbed him with whatever voice they dubbed him with.
I know.
Where it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It just cracked me up. It's just like, hey, you go over here. Yeah. It's just like so classic in a kind of like, I think you used the word earlier, like kitschy horror movie way.
It's a Scooby-Doo voice.
Yeah, it's a Scooby-Doo voice.
Quite literally, it feels like a voice actor from Scooby-Doo.
Something about having that projected over this like random old white dude who is just like showing up to help these kids or whatever, whoever he was. Oh my God, it was so funny and satisfying. It was that combination of that voice and that man's look and performance. I was so happy.
Yeah. I love everybody's crazed performances. Like every time somebody gets crazed.
Oh yeah, no, including, second to that was Jack Woods as Asmodeus, the possessed sheriff, cop, whatever you call him, ranger. I don't know. Because
he's a park ranger, I think, technically.
Kind of reminded me in not Motel Hell. What was it we watched with it was the other slasher film with Tanya in it from Beastmaster.
Oh, yeah. Oh God, what is it called? Something Pit Stop. No, Side of the
Tourist
Road.
Trap.
Tourist Trap, thank you.
So that like old actor guy who's like the classic, strong-jawed actor, kind of, same but not. The effect of having this guy, Jack Woods, as Asmodeus, who just seems like he's more so than the kids, the younger actors in this movie. Not that he's that much older, but he's a little more older, gnarled looking. He seems more closely attached to kind of this guy knows the 40s and grew up in the 50s more so. So just someone of that ilk and era. Playing not so crazy. It's so much fun. It's kind of like some of the appeal of Carnival of Souls too, of the filmmakers themselves. Herc Harvey being these industrial 50s filmmakers making this crazy premise. So seeing Jack Woods as Asmodeus especially just tickled me when he was playing. I'm kind of a you young kids cop, what are you doing? Stay out of here.
Well, and it also evokes a bit of the transitional era ship of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right? Like Jack Woods is actually very much in that same ilk as the Leonardo DiCaprio character.
Was set in 69. Yeah, so 70 essentially.
It really is sort of that transitional time. Maybe that's a part of why this feels so bridged, you know, like, or a bridge to 2 times, because that era happened to be a very serious turning point in history.
Right.
So
like the way the kids are and look, they're the kind of kids where they're still close enough to the Blob teenagers and American Graffiti teenagers. Yet we know these kids have heard the Beatles, but they're still kind of dressing the same. They're still clean cut looking. So yeah, that's again just either the end of that era, but still transitional.
Yeah. God, what else? What else was great? So many things.
I mean, how about any moments that just especially stood out to you then?
I mean, yeah, the flying demon, that whole sequence is amazing. All I could think about is Army of Darkness too, where I was like, there's that same sort of winged demon creature swooping down at people. But I love that all of these creatures are demons, right? Mm-hmm. Like they are specifically like Judeo-Christian like entities. And, you know, even though the book explicitly says that any sort of religious iconography of good, so to speak, so Star of David and the one that they make, which I forget where that one, it's the double circle thing.
Yeah.
I forget what they said it was from. But I love that notion of like, you've got these totems that you can kind of, you know, throw in their face and they go, oh no, it's like Dracula-esque. It's just a cool, fun defense tool.
Like, yeah.
But man, when it's so right on that when they're, well, first of all, that when they're running from the winged demon devil thing, the red guy, this whole movie we've spent sort of in the backwoods of wherever, you know, it's Southern California, like canyons, but it's pretty desolate. There's like, although in a couple shots you can see like houses in the background, but don't worry about that. Seemingly we're in the middle of kind of nowhere. And then suddenly they're in a graveyard, which just cracks me up. And then of course they land at a gravestone that is a cross that the demon then has to like fly, essentially burns up because it like flies into the cross. And that kind of, it's almost dumb, but it's not in this. It's like, it's perfect. It's like, yes, got him. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Comes from just using, again, that's just tie it back to the ingenuity and imagination of just the get it done filmmaking. All right, well, what can we find? What can he run up against? Oh yeah, well, cross gravestone. Yeah. And like too, I thought it was just so smart and fun that you have the flying devil demon is Osmodeus, the Jackwood sheriff guy. So it was just like problem solved for, we have him in demon form when he's flying around and whatever. But once he's actually on top of and interacting and attacking the actors, you just switch it out for the Jackwoods.
Yeah. It's just fun. It's just make the thing work.
Yeah. And like what you said earlier too, with the using the cross and the other symbol to fend them off. And then the monsters, the demons, they want the book is their clear objective. Right. Just those two things, like you said in the summary, it's like, we get it. That's all we need to know. And it's like, even then the ring that Osmodeus is using, it's like, okay, great. It's like evil ring kind of makes him weird go after looking. Him.
Is it a frog? I feel like it's a frog.
I don't know.
I tried to figure it out. At first I thought it was some sort of horse type thing with like little horns, but I think I was looking at it upside down. So I think it's a frog.
It was, and it's cool. It can be kind of,
might be nothing.
Like not, it can be kind of deceiving in a way overall, or like you don't get it at first, or kind of takes you by surprise. But like all these elements we're talking about, they kind of make it so, like you forget that that there is present and you can key into some pretty cool horror story stuff that's not far off from Event Horizon, our last film, actually,
right.
Of just this hellish realm that's just beyond ours. And it's pretty, think about it just in story context of the imagery of these hooded figures walking in a hell-like landscape, falling down bottomless pits, creatures coming through dimensional portals, invisible walls. It's creepy stuff too. It's cool and powerful and does have that cosmic horror element in a way too. So just all the much more neat that they did it on this level.
I mean, dude, Asmodeus, he shapeshifts into Jim.
Right.
Like, that's sweet.
Sure. Yeah.
And leaves Jim behind in the other dimension.
That was a fun shot and just so smart of like, you have evil Jim walk off and then just the actor run over and lay down. So it's like by the time the camera gets to him, it's like, no, there's Jim. It worked so well though. I love that.
Oh, it's so good. That's filmmaking at its best, right? Like, just like throw it together in the easiest way possible. Make it work.
Tell the story.
Yeah.
First and foremost, what tells the story?
It's so good. It's just fun and like, I don't know, man. It makes me want to go make something crazy. Just something way crazy. Forget about, in a way, it makes me, like, I spend a lot of time focusing on like interwoven, like well-structured, like meaningful, like purposeful storytelling. Like, I want things to be connected and I want them all to like reflect on either a theme or like have sort of signposts throughout that like speak to something or relate to each other or whatever it is. And in a way, this kind of movie makes me want to just be like, that's all fine and good, but like, let's just go make a one plot, like just one need movie. Get the book from here to there. That's it. And actually, essentially, that's what the last Mad Max movie was.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so good. So there is something to be said about just pure simplicity of plot. And then the trappings around that is where you kind of get to have the most fun. Instead of getting bogged down in some weird, like, deeper meaning, interconnectivity, like, thing that that often I think can derail your progress because you're like, oh man, it doesn't work because this needs to connect to that, or like it's too convoluted. And that's a big challenge for me, is because I can get very convoluted in my desire to have a story be complex. But like, it doesn't need to be.
No.
By any means.
And I think that is almost like that's what a filmmaker does, is you throw them into any situation or any kind of simple premise and watch them do their thing.
Yeah.
Figure it out, work up against the elements. That's how I think of what a filmmaker is really.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about, let's just take Star Wars since we've mentioned it, like Star Wars is very simple plot. Save the princess, kill the dragon. That's it. That's the story. And it's got all of the basic mythology, like structural signposts and everything. But like, is there really a deeper meaning to Star Wars? I'm speaking specifically of the first film. Not really. Like.
Well, I mean,
It speaks to bigger things because of the nature of the simplicity of it, in a way.
Well,
the universality of it.
But I mean, yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of both how he developed it. I mean, you have that Making of Star Wars book where like you read the original versions of Star Wars were this long, convoluted, all these crazy characters. It read more like the prequels kind of thing.
Yep.
But then what he was also doing at the same time was following these deeply rooted in humans, Joseph Campbell mythologies, all that good stuff, as well as, his interest in Eastern philosophies and putting the Buddhism angle in it, the Force and all that good stuff.
Right,
I mean, this has all been said before. You've heard this before. You're listening to me. But I guess that's just to kind of push back a little of what you're saying as far as, no, but in Star Wars, there still is these.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is
on.
the mythology and the history of story will support a simple plot because we're bound by it anyway. We're influenced by it no matter what.
Well, right. Well, what is life but I want to get the thing and things get in my way?
That's right. That's right. And so, like, in a way, because like you could watch Mad Max and then like I saw lots of articles after that the last Mad Max came out being like, this is like a feminist, what would you call it? A feminist like statement. I was like, oh, is it? Yeah, well, sure. You can pull that out of that. Sure. Was that what he was going? I don't know.
Because it's also just simple story well told.
Right. And the lead character happens to be a woman. Cool. But I mean, I'm not discrediting. I think that there's lots to that movie and lots of it was intentional. So I'm not trying to downplay that. But point is, we don't have to try so hard a lot of the time. Like our experience in storytelling and our knowledge base and even just our general existence in a world that has sort of a collective consciousness of story will lend itself inherently to anything we create.
Well, so yeah, to tie it back to this film, it feels like it started from just this simple premise of, all right, well, let's have 4 kids go out into the woods, desert, Southern California, and mountains, and a bunch of monsters try to get them.
Yeah, how do we connect that?
Yeah. Exactly.
Pretty simply.
Well, I think it's figuring it out, weaving it all together.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Great. Well, I feel like I've said what I need to say on what worked. How about you?
Oh, yeah. I did want to say one thing. The energy and like intensity that Jim and Dave have running through that creek was very impressive to me.
How would you describe the energy?
I mean, just full speed ahead through a creek. Those things are rocky, dude. All I could think about is like, I just was like, oh, they're going to break an ankle. Oh, they're going to like twist their knee. Oh God, it's horrible. Cause that's basically my whole life is twisting ankles or spraining ankles and twisting knees. But I was like, man, they're really going for it. And like, just, consequences be damned. They're just going for it for the love of the shot.
The film gods were on their side in that one.
Really. And yeah, I guess I mentioned it before, but the continuity of their hairstyles and the different wigs that what's not Susan, the other girl, Jim's girl, Vicky, like her hair changes shot to shot so many times.
Apparently, one of the dudes
cracked me up.
I watched an interview. One of the dudes, his sideburns was changing all over the place.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, Dave's hair is super short and like in a sort of a pompadour coif for, it's basically maybe a third of the shots of him are that haircut. And then everything else is a bit longer. Man, it's so funny. They did not care. And I kind of appreciate that they're just like, who cares?
Actually, I think they did care because it was one of the actors, he said his performance, his acting approach, it was all just worrying about the continuity of his clothes.
Well, that's an actor's problem. That's like the what's his name? Who said this? I think it was James Cameron was like, I'm convinced that most actors, when they're looking at the monitor, looking at playback, are just looking at their hair.
Well, no, it was the stress of not having a script person that they were kind of getting at and just kind of illustrating the low budget affair.
But I'm saying the director, the filmmakers, ultimately were like, not an issue we need to really concern ourselves with.
Well, I think it was also they couldn't.
That's what I mean.
They were literally like, losing track.
It is what it is.
of if he was in a sweater or not in this shot or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, his hair is so different. It just cracked me up.
But all is to say, this is under what worked.
It did.
Not things
it worked because it's that kind of movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
It's funny. I'm just the kind I only, I guess, register or pay attention to faces. So I didn't notice any of that at all.
Well, for me, the shape of what keyed me into it is the shape of his face kept changing, essentially. I was like, whoa, something's different. And after 4 or 5 times, I was like, oh, it's that. And then there was like one moment where it was shot, reverse shot back to the shot, and his hair is different in the returning to shot. And I was like, oh, like they had to reshoot the scene. And they're just choosing the take that worked.
It's funny, just for the what worked as far as how you're describing what worked is more of an after the fact appreciation for me.
Yeah.
For me, it just worked. I just really didn't notice it all.
Yeah.
I'm just that kind of viewer. All right.
Well, at one point, I thought that the Vicky actress was a different person. I was like, wait, is that the same actress from earlier? Because she looks totally different. And I realized it was just her hair.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Do you like how they... maybe this is... For me, this is... yeah, it's a what worked. Sure, why not? You like that Vicky and Susan are essentially wearing the exact same outfit?
And are very similar types.
Yeah, I was like, man, just throwing curveballs at us. I don't know what to think. Who's who?
I mean, they're all kind of the same type. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got.
Great. Then we can move on to our next section for Equinox. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I feel like out of any movie we've done, this just feels like, I don't know, the most, like, what's the point and what did not work? It's because it's just so the spirit just kind of overrides everything.
Yeah. The only thing that I kind of lean toward not working, but it's not that big of a deal. I just don't really love the sort of prologue cold open. Well, I like the cold open, actually. I like seeing Dave run away, get hit by the car, and get like picked up. I like that. But the whole like reporter, doctor, seeing Dave in an asylum, that whole sequence and then coming back to it, I was like, this isn't doing much for me.
Just make it a little shorter or something.
Not even. I mean, I just felt like you could, like, sure, show him in the asylum. That's fine. But having this kind of weird, almost, I don't know, just long exposition-ish scene.
Yeah.
Just seemed really kind of unnecessary to me. I was like, and it wasn't like, when we got to the end and like returned to those guys. It was sort of like, even the reporters are like, okay, well, I didn't really care about this anyway, so I'll see you later. It's like, well, So if I had to criticize something, I would just say, just toss that out. Just the dialogue of that. Just show Dave in there being messed up from this experience and then come back and see him. Actually, I don't even think you need any of that. Just get there in the end.
You just reminded me of another what worked, which was him at the end, though, yelling like, my cross. Yeah. Just crazy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
great.
Show that. That's fine. All of that's fine. I just think that whole dialogue scene between the doctor and reporter is like unnecessary, I guess.
Yeah, I guess just expanding it to feature length. I don't know.
You could have, really what I'm saying is the reporter is useless.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point? It didn't help me in any way. So whatever. It's fine. It's not a big part of the movie, but if I had to criticize something, that'd be it.
My only, if you're just looking at, again, like just outside of not even looking at it as the outside of the film and what went into it or the spirit of any of that, but just watching it as a movie. And this is a bit of maybe expectations I had not met. But when you see the castle, I just wanted that location change of getting to get inside the castle so bad, because also the locations we're in, it's just like reminded me of when I go on a hike out here and there's no shade and I'm just hot and I don't like it.
Sure. Well, here's, what they could have done, because this does exist up in a number of these areas, is at least getting to like ruins. Like, because there are old, ruins up in these mountains.
Yeah,
That would have been fun.
Switch up some location feel stuff by having ruins.
Yeah, just because they talk about, we got to get there a few times, and then we never get there.
All I'm saying is we see a castle, and we didn't get to see inside of it.
I was surprised, actually, that we didn't, because it seemed kind of like this is like that would fit in perfectly with this. Just a couple of, styrofoam stone hallways with some torches.
If they get their castle set for a weekend, whatever
exactly.
it is that they build.
Yeah. You just throw up some plywood and paint the walls and make it look like stone.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
Cool.
All right.
I mean, really, like, what else? What are we going to criticize?
Great. Perfect. Then
I didn't like that the ape had furry arm, like discolored arms. I thought it was really distracting.
I'm just going to leave that at that and move on to our next section. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
All right, my question I had for you, Tim.
Yes.
I was going to pose earlier. How do I put this? But we were talking about practical effects, the ingenuity of practical effects, how you were kind of saying that something behooves them versus CG After effects, let's say. And how, we were noting the spirit that is, we always use this word, imbued into the effects themselves by someone making them. Now, do you think that human spirit can similarly be put into CG? When does it work? When doesn't it work? Is there more of a guarantee that the practical effects will have that just by default? How do you kind of break all that down?
I look at it from an artistry point of view. So I think that the most successful special effects are birthed out of very talented artistry. In other words, whatever the thing may be, whether it's a matte painting or a digital matte painting, somebody has to paint it. A digital artist, a painter, either way. When that person is allowed to put their artistry into that piece of work, that's when I think the effect rises to its highest sort of level. When it's plug and play, pre-made, sort of sourced stuff, I think often that's where stuff starts to fall apart. Because there's, I was watching a YouTube thing the other day where they took a animation, like a computer animation of just like a stick figure. It's a pre-made animation. And they sent it out and said, we want any graphic VFX artist to make the world that this stick figure is walking through. Like, you make your digital rendering however you want to make it. And some of the stuff that people come up with is incredible. And so I don't think the distinction is between digital and analog at all. I think the distinction is intention and artistry. And if you're allowed to, have those things work together freely, that's when you start to get the product is imbued with a spirit. It's sort of like the difference between a photographer going out and taking a picture of two people or you saying to an intern, hey, can you get me a stock photo of two people? There's a huge difference. And we kind of know, like, we can feel the difference.
Yes. I like all that. I agree with
Is
that.
that a sufficient answer?
Well, yeah, I just think there's
That's
other
my take on it.
angles to look at it. Like
Sure.
how I kind of try to break it down. Well, I like to acknowledge though there definitely is an artistry on the CG side of course. If they think of like the lighting artist, whatever, down every side of it, I'd say is an artist making something. So it's that difference for me of kind of like to continue that metaphor we were saying earlier of a filmmaker just being able to get a camera and go out into the woods, and you will see that filmmaker's skill and who they are and what makes them unique on display because they are in such conflict with just sort of not having the means to something. I think that you can continue that metaphor to making practical effects where you're inherently more just having to use the ingenuity to work around the physical elements at play and restrictions. How do we get this to move a certain way? How do we get these tubes to let out the blood a certain way? It's just all kinds of things. You have more limitations built in, right? So it's just kind of that idea where I think a more humanistic side can maybe come out from such a human being in conflict with something is what sort of draws that out. Like that's one way I kind of look at it. But then I have to acknowledge then what the CG does and maybe other modern practical effects, just the idea of where we're at now with technology. It feels like you can more accurately like have a thought or an idea and fully realize what it is. So it's like as if that CG modern techniques, you're able to like pull from the source, the out there, the above on some deep level in that sense of being able to make it accurate to that. Yet then on the practical effects side, you can still tune in to whatever that far out feeling is you're trying to get to. And that's going to show up in the conflict with just physically making something in our real world.
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, my only thing is that, like, I think that often we have a taste value judgment, and that's subjective, right? Like, you said that there are sometimes more obstacles with doing things in a practical realm. I don't think there are more. I just think that the obstacles are different. You know what I mean? I try not to.
But
one versus the other is a weird. It's a tricky thing to kind of navigate.
But I mean, the kind of obstacles I'm talking about, though, I don't know if it applies to CG. I'm talking about obstacles as far as being able to fully like realize something with no limitations. That's what I see CG offering nowadays.
But I wonder.
We saw the evolution of CG with Pixar.
True?
Like Pixar figured out water in this movie. Pixar figured out hair in this movie. It's like we could do whatever now.
Yes and no.
You got to do it well.
Right.
But it's
there.
I
think that to me, we have seen time and again that the best results, the most universally sort of appealing results, come out of a large combination of and a very delicate use of mixing all of the things at our disposal.
I mean, that is kind of the coolest and what excites me the most in a ways of having enough of a practical thing to get your brain to see it as real and then augment it with the CG just to make you go, wait, but how did they do that? That can't be real.
I mean, this is sort of why I think the stuff with the Mandalorian is doing with the Unreal Engine is so fascinating because, as my friend put it, I was like, what's the broader sort of universal application of this, for the average person or average, non-studio filmmaker? And I think one of the big advantages that that things like using an Unreal Engine allow us is you could actually make your entire film that you see in your head in Unreal Engine first. And that's not the finished product, right? But that's a tool to present and say, this is my vision. Take it take it for what it is. Like, it's not, I mean, if you wanted to go down the rabbit hole and get amazing at using that program and refining every little detail, go for it. But you could literally just make a stick figure. You could make a previs of your entire film in Unreal Engine, and it would look, you could populate it and make it look pretty good. And then you can really give a sense of the vision that you have as a presentation, so that you can have the real version, the film version that you want made or funded. And I think that's a big step, because we so often we're kind of have our hands tied behind our back between how we see it in our heads and what we know we can get close to making practically if somebody gives us the opportunity and the money or whatever the thing that you need to make the thing. And so that, to me, is like using these things as tools to ultimately get to realizing your vision is the most exciting application to me of the sort of technological advances. But like, there's a big difference between a vintage Zeiss lens from, 1950 and the digital repurposed version of that, or not repurposed, but the digital attempt at recreating that effect. There's a difference. And so, like, that's why I say, to me, it's a taste thing.
Right. I think, and whether something's working or not, it's just kind of I don't know. It sounds like a kind of magical way to put it, but the faith in your intent is, I think, always the most important thing in filmmaking. And that manifests in a lot of ways. I guess maybe you kind of answered this, but another way I kind of want to pose what I'm trying to get at is, if you are just looking at it as CG and practical effects as separate things, what excites you differently about them? What does excite you about each of them?
Yeah. I mean, kind of what I just went through is probably the biggest thing. Being able to put real humans, because I'm still never gonna really get on board with digital representations of humans. I just think sure, maybe someday.
Feels weird to you?
It feels, it does feel weird. It feels like there's always going to be a bit of a barrier between us and that. The uncanny valley kind of thing, or whatever it is. You can get close, and they have gotten close, but it's still like our brains are built specifically to recognize other humans.
I feel like, though, that we could evolve and change out of that, though. Look at how humans evolve, where once we're all between that becoming more predominant in movies and shows or whatever, combined with generations growing up where a metaverse is just as common as our waking universe, our our physical universe. Because there's going to be that, what our people born now, like us, might feel as like, if we're in the metaverse, there might be that uncanny valley. But for other people, that could feel more, it will become less uncanny.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong necessarily. And we know that because the current generation hears auto-tuned voices and distinctly, this is a bit of a generalization, but we know that there's a large swath of young generation or people born after a certain year that hear autotune because that's what they're used to, and they think that sounds better than natural, non-auto-tuned singing. And me as a singer from the generation I'm from doesn't like. So like there's subjectivity in that, and like what you're used to does Like what you've been exposed to does play a big role in how you consume and appreciate anything.
I guess got to mention with that though, like the younger generations though, they still, you see them seeing like the old stuff is cool. Oh, I still love Pink Floyd, whatever it is. Like there's
Also true.
I feel like there's always the two sides of
Yeah.
It's not a generalization one way or the other. But sorry, I kind of derailed you as far as what the excitement of CG versus practical effects.
I think the excitement, the biggest aspect of it to me is being able to put actual actors into a visual environment that they can interact with in real time. It's immersive on a level that we've never been able to have before. In one major regard, you can drop Leonardo DiCaprio into, the Canadian like tundra and have him act, and it'll go a long way. It'll inform the performance a lot because it's fucking cold and you're tired and you're out there in the elements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, I'm sure somebody will disagree with me, but as an actor, I think being able to do exactly that same thing in an environment where you aren't actually freezing yourself to death helps a lot. And I would almost equate it to athletics. You're at your best as an athlete often when you're most relaxed. And so, the perception of the challenge, is argued often to be the thing that drives people to greatness at times. Sure. But they're still actors, man. Like we're not actually supposed to get shot with the bullet. You're supposed to be able to act that. And so being in a place mentally and environmentally where you can immerse so fully in that environment with while retaining the actual safety and comfort and relaxation that's needed for performance, that's huge.
You just made me realize, I thought I liked The Mandalorian a lot and was totally sold on that technology. I didn't even know it at first till I learned. I'm like, wait, really? So, but you wonder if it's the perfect show to get us used to that technology, to have an actor whose face we don't see the whole show.
That's right. Yeah. It was baby steps, let's ease into it.
No, he's a great actor though, but just the circumstance of that's funny.
That's funny.
Well,
ironic.
What about the practical side?
Well, I think you're melding the two. That's what's so great about it.
But I was trying to, no, not in The Mandalorian. What I was posing you is what excites you about the CG and what excites you about the practical.
Well,
so you covered CG, but.
Well, what I'm saying is that with the CG technology we're moving into, we get to retain the important things of practical effects, costuming.
Right, no, but I was just asking as far as look at them as separate art forms or separate approaches.
I don't think you can anymore. Or you can, but I'm not excited by separating them anymore. That's kind of where I land. I'm most excited about the amalgamation or the combination of those two worlds being all of the tools, the best parts of both worlds.
I think that's
turning into one thing.
That's
exciting.
That's the better answer as far as an approach to filmmaking now, I think, in a way. Or that excites me too. I don't want to say better. But how about from a historical context, one versus the other?
I don't know. Hard to make a judgment. I think,
I guess we already kind of covered
there's
it.
Benefit. There's always benefit and there's always problems. I guess it's just sort of like one of those things where where do you land if you hold esteem to the challenge or the suffering that's implied of that often comes with doing things practically.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes, that's great.
If you can say, do you agree that traditionally, historically, practical effects have a certain kind of magic that CG has not?
For most of film history, yes.
And
I think we're leaving that era.
yes. And so anything about that does excite you, of that now foregone era of...
What excites me is that it will never actually be, well, in the right hands, I don't think it should ever be foregone. I think that, like, what did we watch the other day? Event Horizon, when I was like, you've got these things floating in zero gravity, right? And they look terrible. That's because CGI was in a terrible place, right? It wasn't ready for that. Just have it on a string. And like, we've seen things levitate on a string. Magicians do it all the time, in real time, in front of you, and you can't see the string, right? It can be done practically and looks better. Our brains like it more. So, dependent on the circumstances, do the practical part that works best, that we know works. Hold on to those tricks and put them into the environment of the things that we have to digitally do. Like, mesh the two. You want Luke's lightsaber to fly across the room and into his hand. Do it practically, but have him standing in front of the landscape of Hoth digitally.
Yes, great. I'm still.
The end.
I was still trying to get at. You always bring it back to where we're at now, but I was trying to.
What's the future?
Yeah, no, I was trying to look at what's the past. No,
Hold on to the past.
But I feel like
I don't know how to answer.
All that is evidence. Not being able to answer that, I guess, how I asked is evidence of your excitement for the combination of the two.
I just think it's like, why are we trying to, like, holding on to the past is...
It's not a holding on that I'm looking at, but it's
ignoring the technical advances, or like eschewing them for some philosophical reason.
No, yeah.
Meh.
I'm trying to understand the real magic behind each approach to then sort of help that inform how to combine them.
That, to me, I think that's subjective and to the determination of the filmmaker.
Yeah. But
like,
I guess, and
there are things that I want to do that I would say I would never want to do this digitally.
And for me, it's like we always just kind of, everyone's answer is, well, yeah, there's a certain kind of, human quality, what I was describing, of that magic that puts in there from a human working in conflict with a physical thing. I was just trying to get a layer deeper on that. That's all I was just trying to pose questions that would kind of get at a deeper level why that does have that magic to it. But anyway.
Our brains.
Great.
I don't know.
Tough to explore, but I agree. I'm excited about both. Okay, Equinox. Tib, there was one shot in it that I swear was not dubbed. Do you remember when they're like sitting down to have their picnic, and it's like one main picnic shot where it's like they have that line about the KFC and one of them walks over to the other guy?
Yeah.
But I swear that sounded like it was not dubbed, and it just cracked me up that
I believe it.
They're
like,
movie.
This is the only one that we could save.
Yeah, it's funny.
Why save it then?
Or decide? I don't know. I'd be curious about that if my ears weren't deceiving me, my ears and eyes. Forrest J. Ackerman, famous monsters in Filmland, as I said, knew Dennis Muren and sort of mentored him. It sounds like he cameoed by being one of the voices on the tape interviewing our crazed David in those wraparound scenes. Yep. And then it was really hard to kind of parse what just the original short was, and then what what was the added scenes were. I guess you could tell by, like you were saying, the physical difference, but yeah, no, just hearing, kind of getting the behind the scenes, I couldn't really parse it. It sounded like it was either some or maybe all of the scenes with Jack Woods as Asmodeus, but it's hard to imagine the short being entirely without him, so I don't know. But the one thing definitively that they said the producers added when expanding it to a feature was the question mark after the end at the end.
Yeah. Sure. Big question.
Yeah. Great. Things of note for you?
I have a huge one. I mean, absolutely huge. Although I want to double check my my research here. Did you notice in the opening credits who the assistant camera operator was?
No.
It was Ed Begley Jr. You know who that is?
Yeah, wait, no way.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, what? So I'm trying to check my IMDb here to see if that credit is. Oh yeah. Whoa, additional crew. He was a voice in The Entity, another film we watched.
He confirmed it on Twitter.
Oh yeah, here it is. Assistant camera, Equinox, uncredited.
He says
he's not uncredited. It's in the opening credits.
He says Equinox is truly the Citizen Kane of movies, for which Ed Begley Jr. served as assistant cameraman. Someone else said that on Twitter, and then Ed Begley Jr. responded on Twitter, true.
Amazing.
Unless he's being
quite amazing.
A little devil. But he says it's true. That is great.
So he was in The Entity and Equinox.
You usually give us budget and gross.
Oh, yeah. I don't have it in front
So
of me.
the budget combined with the first initial shoot and the pickups, I guess, was like $8,000, $9,000. And then the box office, God, what a great return on investment. $849,600.
Oh! Midnight showings.
Yeah.
Just crushing it. It's perfect for that.
Yeah.
What more could you ask for? Damn. I want to have a midnight viewing of this, like on the roof of my building. I'll get one of those. Actually, you know, I have a projector now.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So maybe I'll just hang a sheet.
That's all you got to do.
Or something out on the little patio there.
I can't think of a better way to watch this movie than on a sheet.
How great would that be?
Cool.
Maybe I do have to buy it.
So are you officially changing your rating?
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
Your first buy it in a long time, I want to say.
No kidding.
Awesome. Well, we like to then wind down here with our RecommenDEADtions. I got one. Do you got one?
Well,
you better have one.
I do. Wait, I don't remember what it was, though. So you go ahead.
Okay, Tim. Do you remember a few episodes ago how I mentioned at the beginning, I'm like, is anyone else as excited about Old as I am?
Oh, yeah. Did you see it?
I did.
Ooh.
I loved it.
Oh, wow.
I loved it.
I'll probably hate it then.
It was, I've thoroughly enjoyed all his films from The Visit onward, which I think I said then. But man, I could just go on. It was incredible. I loved it so much. You got to be able to like, this is just not an issue for me, but he definitely has like an idiosyncratic way he's directing, you know, the performances, which I think a lot of people say, oh, that's bad acting. But for me, it translates as this is how M. Night sees movies. This is his rooted in B-movie feel kind of way of doing it. But the actors, they still like act in that for me, like for me to really get into it. And it's just, it's seeing him work with such a clear, here's a high concept idea, you know, what Old is about. It really worked for his strengths. I loved it. I want to see it again. If you ever want to cover it for our show, let's talk about it. Old, go see the new M. Night. And if you see it in theaters, he gives a little, there's a little message from him thanking you for supporting theaters and coming out to see it.
Oh, man. Okay, well, let's see. I think, you know, speaking of The Mandalorian, I think people, if you haven't seen a movie called Prospect, it's a cool, well, it's sci-fi, but in a way it's just kind of, it's very much like an old Western. It's kind of got this, it's, you know, it's like 3 characters.
But sci-fi, you just said?
But it's sci-fi, yeah. They're on an alien moon, crash landed, and it's got that kind of like somebody's got like the batteries or the goods or whatever, and somebody else, it's like a bag of money kind of, you know, who's gonna double cross who kind of thing. And it's Diego, wait, is that his name? No, it's Pedro Pascal. I was gonna say Diego Luna. He's the other Star Wars guy
who's in
Yeah, in Rogue One. No, so it's the Mandalorian. It's Pedro. Who? How do you not like him? He's like everybody's favorite dad, and he always seems to be playing these like troubled dad characters, even if he's not the actual father. That's his casting. It's like every movie he's been in, he's that, and he kind of has that in this too. But man, he's so good. The actress is what's her name? Sophie Thatcher, who I feel like we watched something with, but I can't remember. Anyway, it's really good. It's fun and creepy and intense and sci-fi and weird, and it's got that kind of it's got a really cool design. Like even the space suits that they're in is all very. There's got to be a term for this. It's like astropunk or something like that. The design of the movie alone is worth seeing it for. It's a weird amalgamation of genre in a way.
And where do we find it?
It's on Netflix.
Great.
Get into it. It's fun.
Cool. Pedro Pascal. Yeah. I do not think we've watched anything with Sophie Thatcher.
Okay. She's just really familiar. She's up and coming, I suppose.
Oh, and Jay Duplass.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the main people.
Great. All right. Cool. Well, then we wind further down with selecting our film for next week.
Okay.
Great.
Get into it. It's your turn.
All right. For next week, we will be watching Les Diaboliques, I think is how you pronounce it.
The original or the remake?
1955.
Oh, well, there
Diabolique, Les Diaboliques. Great.
Cool.
It's been on my, gotta watch it list. So I look forward to finally watching it.
Sweet.
All right. Well, until then, which will be episode 155, you can find us wherever you found us. Our big ask is if you made it this far, why not tell a friend about our fair show? See if they want to join our friend family here. We'd love to have them.
Yeah. Come on over.
Great. And
I'll get a sheet.
Yeah. We'll watch Equinox. And Tim will put on all the other movies he wants to put on at a party.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be great. Great. Well, in closing, get that camera, get those friends, go out to the woods, make your movie. Thanks for listening.
And we will see you next time.
Goodbye.